Hey everybody, welcome. Before we begin, I wanted to do an emergency breaking sponsorship. You've heard of breaking news. This is a breaking sponsorship because it's time sensitive. So thank you to this video sponsor, Noble Knight Games. Here's their game store in Fitchburg, Wisconsin. My God, look at the size of that. But I wanted to let everybody know that as of the time of filming this video on February 14th, 2025, they are having a massive clearance sale up to 80% off everything. Well, not everything, but every category of thing. 39,000 items still on sale. And I did a little exercise here. I just looked and I started clicking like different filters until I reached 1,000 products that were on clearance. And so I got to it with just hitting miniatures and RPGs and then like 8 publishers that I recognized. And so this isn't like yesterday's trash. As you can see here, these are really good games, and the prices of some of these are going to blow you away. Call of Cthulhu, Tales from the Loop, GURPS, Age of Rebellion, Pulp Cthulhu, um, Traveler. Okay, tons of great stuff there. You can come away with some deals and steals. So please check that out. Noble Knight Games. Use the link below. It will support the channel. Um, and I always tell people that I take all of my sponsorship funds from them as store credit. That's how much I adore uh, this business. I just got last week used some of it to get Forsaken Scriptures, a Morkborg compatible dungeon crawl, where the instructions are, of course, written as the dungeon, and then Substratum Protocol, which we're definitely going to show on the channel. It's one of the newer, fully formed solo games and an underground investigation. So you can get games, dice, board games, accessories, anything you need at Noble Knight. Hit that link below. I really appreciate it. Please support this business. We need businesses like this in the world, and this is a way that you can help each other. Get some games, have a great time, and the delivery is fast. So Noble Knight Games, complete your quest, or where the out of print. Say with me, where the out of print becomes available again. Okay, let's start the show. All right, everybody, welcome. So today we're going to be talking about a game that I poo-pooed on about a year and a half ago. If you recall, in my hubris, my arrogance, I had many recommendations for this game, and I turned my nose up at it. And finally, I indulged the unwashed masses, and I said, fine, I'll pick up the game. I bought the game, I read it, and then I arrogantly reported, no, I returned it. I did. I returned it. This is actually the second copy that I got. I got this about 2 months ago, finally giving in to the war of attrition, because I will say Blades fans are persistent, and so they did not stop with recommending that I get it, asking me to talk about it on the channel. So I said, fine, I'll get it. I got it. Sat around for another 2 months. 2 weeks ago, I picked it up. I read it, and it takes a big man to admit that you're a stupid idiot, and that's what I am, because this game has utterly blown me away. I have been singularly obsessed with this game. I bought Blades in the Dark. I bought Deep Cuts, which is John Harper's update that came out, I think, a few months ago, 2020, well, maybe 2023, I'm not sure, but which is sort of a refinement to the game, some new content. We'll talk a little bit about that. I have created a bunch of solo tools for the game that I'm eventually, once I like fill all of these out, I'm going to put something up on drive through. But yeah, so I've had the my fixation set on this, so much so that like I just haven't made a video in a week because I've just been thinking about Blades of the Dark. I got Blades in the deck. which are like the different decks, which I think are going to be crucial in solo play. They're different decks that I think I actually have the PDF for them. Oh, that's Duskval. You know what? Let's start this the right way. Let's do this. Let's do this video the right way. In fact, I was so careful about this that I wrote a 2-bit script. Okay. Opening shot. Dim the lights. Okay, that's about as much as it dims. Welcome to the shadows of Duskval, where daring scoundrels, ambitious crews, and criminal masterminds carve their legacy into the dark alleys and haunted streets of an industrial, fantasy, retro-futurist, steampunkish sort of underworld. Blades in the Dark isn't just another RPG, friends. It's a game that demands a shift in how you think about storytelling, mechanics, and player agency. If you've played traditional RPGs, throw all that away because we got a whole different system here. The story is going to move fast. The dice are going to drive the drama, and the world pushes back just as hard as you push into it. This is a game where failure isn't the end. It's just a more interesting story, and where the real challenge isn't just winning a fight, but surviving the long game, outmaneuvering your enemies, and rising in power while the city closes around you. Now make your voice deep. Oh, crap. Before we get into mechanics, let's talk about the biggest mindset shift you need to make when playing Blades in the Dark. Okay, my teleprompter app froze. 1 second. All right, I should have known. It says it's a free teleprompter app. Right. Free to try. Then I got to upgrade to what? $9.99 a month for a teleprompter? I'm doing it manually, all right? We'll do it this way. So here's what this video is going to include. First, we're going to talk a little bit more about what Blades in the Dark is, and that will include my personal journey, my expectations of what it was the first time that I returned it, and then my enlightenment, as well as what I think are some extremely special things about this game and the pieces of it. We'll leave it at that for now. No, I got like kind of a. It's like just a joke. I'll forget that. I'm not gonna do it. Mindset shift, right? So there's got to be a mindset shift with how you approach Blades in the Dark, because if you try to learn it from the perspective of a traditional role-playing game, you're just not going to get it. And I think a lot of what turned me off about this game was just like not being able to see it the way it was yet, because I was trapped in the superstructure, man. I was seeing things the way I normally wanted to see them, and I said, not only is this not what I'm looking for right now, it is also, this doesn't even feel like a game, right? This is some sort of like storytelling generator, and I'm definitely not interested in that. And I was totally wrong, but in order to shift the mindset, I have created tools, and we are going to I'm going to give some analogies that helped me to understand this better. We'll start there, and then we'll explain again the pieces of the game. I know that doesn't make sense, but when you see these cards, you'll understand it. All right. All right. I'll show the blade. It's not really, it's not really a blade. I just thought it was kind of cool because it looked like one. This is like a guansha, Korean. You could kind of. I have my hand, my carpal tunnel surgery. You know what? This is very. I'm sorry. That's a guansha. Oh, come on. Why would I do this to myself? Sorry about the blade thing. We're going to talk about the main mechanics. I'm going to map those out. So there are some incredible videos online that give explanations of how to play blades, and they're more comprehensive than I want to be in this video, because we're going to talk about the game from sort of a higher level view. But in order to understand the shift that I was talking about and put it into focus, I am going to go over the main mechanics of the game. Now, a couple of disclaimers. Number one, I'm not going to cover all of them. Number two, I've only soloed this game. I really would love to play it in a group, and I firmly believe that you cannot fully understand a game until you play it. So I may not understand the implications of some mechanics, but I'm going to do my best to explain them as I understand them. I also am not going to include Blades in the Dark Deep Cuts, which was released actually November of 2024, so just like 3 or 4 months ago. Right now, I read through this a little bit, and I'm going to give you my honest impression of it is that I felt like, if you're familiar with Crime and Punishment, Dostoevsky like added a chapter later about anyways, there was like a redemptive chapter that some people say he added later due to publisher pressure. I'm not saying that that's what this was, but as I learned this system and then I read this, and not only is there new expansion of the setting, which is really cool, but there's also some refinements to some of the systems in the game, and I don't. I was reading it and I was like, no, why? Why would you do that? That was perfect, right? But here's the thing. I don't know what I'm talking about because, again, I haven't played the game, and I haven't played the game for a long time. And so I, I'm not going to be arrogant again to say that these are really bad, because I think my sense is, as I was reading about some of these changes and some of these refinements, they look like things that I can't possibly understand. Like, they're fixing things that I can't possibly understand yet. And so right after you read a system and you fully get it and you fully integrate it and you like appreciate its full elegance, and then you fast forward, I mean, this was written in what, 2000, well, it was 2017. So this is released 8 years later. I haven't been playing it in that time. And so I have no way to actually measure this. And so because of that, I'm going to not include anything from that. I may do that in a future video if I learn that a little bit more. And to be clear, I don't actually think it's like the Crime and Punishment thing. I just don't understand it, okay? And for the 3 people who are following me with the thing about Svidrigalov. Okay, so that will not include that. It will include a lot of the mechanics. Once we finish the main mechanics, I'm going to talk about why I believe this game is a soloist's delight, and why it has so many things that make this a beauty of a solo game. It's incredible. Clocks, flashbacks, resistance rolls, action rolls, the cinematic approach, the way to shift POVs in time, having this like separateness of experience that's still immersive. All of it is, I mean, I'll be honest, I'll say this up front. I cannot believe this game was not. I think you could have added like 10 pages here and there and made this into a game like Ironsworn, Starforged. I really do, because it has so much that just it is cut of the solo cloth. Okay. Then we are going to play out a scenario, and like I recently did in a Pendragon video, we'll talk about like we'll do a sample heist, just a pretty simple one, and we'll go through the different steps of it and talk about like how you make the decisions, how you use the different mechanics and stuff like that, because I think seeing it play out like that in real time will help it click for some people. And then we'll talk about the gaps. There are not a lot of gaps in terms of solo play, and what I mean by this is like this is one of the first things I do with any game that I want to play solo is I go, okay, like what am I able to do with the stuff that's already in the book? What am I able to add in that will help to sort of bridge what is missing and what is there? And I think a lot of these are very easy to fill. I've already filled a lot of them, and we'll talk about some different ways that if you want to play this solo, you can fill in those gaps as well. And then after we do that, um, finally, the last thing is that I am going to play Torch in the Dark, which is the solo module that I think is the best one for Blades in the Dark. I don't think a lot of them are that high of quality except for this one. And this one is going to be for the members. I'm going to film it tonight, not right away. So it'll probably be in like 3 hours because I did promise myself a treaty treat if I finish this video. I was going to go to my game store to do a browse. I'm sure I won't spend anything. But when I get home, I'm going to film this. So if you're a member, you can look forward to that being uploaded tonight. This is really, really cool. Um, I'm so proud of myself. Druidic Habit would be very, very proud of me because not only did I successfully print this out as a like a zine booklet in the right order, I also did something I've never done before, and I highly recommend this, is that I bought some like nice paper that is the what is it, 5.5 by 8.5, that has the 6 hole punches, and I did two-sided printing of it because it's just available for PDF on drive-through, and it just looks like so nice. And I know it doesn't look like it's double-sided, but these are like sort of intentionally blank pages here. And this is a Torch in the Dark, so we'll go over that. When I first saw it, it's $15, which I do think I wish it were $5 less. I think that would be a really good price point for it. Obviously, free to charge whatever people want, but I just, not because I like think I'm being ripped off or anything, but because I think more people would access this if it was $9.99. But even so, if you paid $15 for it, you would feel satisfied. And let me tell you why. When I first got it, I was like, oh man, it's only 39, 40 pages for $15. Like, oh, that's kind of steep. And it's like, I printed this, so it was just PDF. But the thing is that after it goes through how to do everything, and I think that this is a great game. If you'll see that after we're done talking about like the solo gaps and the considerations, the mechanics, if you're like, okay, I really want to play Blades in the Dark solo now, but I don't know how to get started, I don't know what to do, play this first, and I think this is going to bring you to the other side of that, so that when you're done, he abstracts the rules in a lot of ways that are like simplified and really handy. And so when I was playing this, just when I was trying it out, I was like, oh, okay, like I get it. Like this is a very simplified form of this mechanic in here. And I think it's fantastic. But yeah, I was like, oh man, it's only 40 pages. I mean, it's really nice. It looks good, but you know, it's black and white and it's got so what's the big deal? And then I got to this example of a delve, and it lays out a delve really nice. And then I get to this page, and I was like, oh, the dungeon guide. I turn and I say, oh, that's really cool. They give you like a sample dungeon. And the way that these dungeons, this dungeon works here is that you're going to draw cards, and then based on the cards will be like the nature of the delve. And so to be, I had this like, well, I can't find it right now, but I had this tiny little deck of cards that I was playing with last night. It was so funny. Um, oh, you had to be there. So I was like, well, that's pretty nice. That's pretty cool. You know, they included this delve. That's nice. What else do they have? Oh, another one. And I'm gonna, you know, I obviously want to protect this person's stuff here, but let me just say that there is another one, another one, another one, another one. There are, I think, 7 delves in here that are partly like procedurally generated and partly they are set like locations. It is amazing. It is so good. It's perfect. And I mean, it's just a reminder too that like value doesn't always come from page numbers. And I have to remember that, especially I complain a lot about stuff like that sometimes. And the reason I complain about those things is not because I'm like, oh, I don't want to pay this. I don't want to pay for people's like what I complain about when I complain about that is like I don't there are people who like go into this blind and they will go on drive through and they will just pick up the first thing they see And sometimes I think people take advantage of that with solo supplements. And a person doesn't know that they just paid $10 for like a two-sided sheet. And I know we've talked about this, we have different opinions on it, but this doesn't matter because this one that definitely does not apply. So, um, we are going to start with what is Blades in the Dark. So, uh, the other thing that would be good to say is what did I think Blades in the Dark was? What did I think it was when I returned it? Well, you have to understand that when I got this game, I was moving on to like phase two of solo evolution, and there's like your personal solo evolution will differ based on your entry point. So let me show you this. Um, I think there's like these certain paths for people to get into solo play. Obviously, there's many of these, but I see these ones very often. So if you came in from like a journaling one, you go to like Thousand-Year-Old Vampire, and then probably from there one day you bite the bullet, you get Colossal, and you say I'm gonna get that, and then from Colossal, which introduces like a little bit of mechanics, you might be able to like intersect here with the people who start with delves, like 2d6 dungeon, D100 dungeon. Karanethlis would be like a really good one to start with. And also, there's like this other road here. If you're a person who didn't wait for permission and you just started like soloing whatever you were playing, I always see these kind of comments. They're like, "Yeah, I just started solo playing D&D Fourth Edition in 2004, and I never looked back." But this one, like Scarlet Heroes, would be a good headway in there. These two can like meet up here, and then you have Emergent. If you're doing Emergent, the Emergent entry point, which is this was my Emergent entry point. You play Ironsworn and Starforged, and like all roads, no matter what, and there's lots of other branches, but all roads, end to Called to the Green, which is Manalone's solo role playing supplement available on Drive Through RPG, link below. But if you are on this path, right, and I was here, so I also had blinders on. I had no idea like that there was a big, well, there really isn't, still isn't a big community of it, but I didn't know that there was a lot of other concepts of solo play happening. And so this was really good actually because now I feel like I have so many options that sometimes I will not give a game its like due time and I'll move on to the next thing. But I spent 6 or 7 months playing Starforged, and I think that I finally got to the point where I wanted to like branch out a little bit, and I said, "Well, I enjoy this, and I know it's based on the Powered by the Apocalypse system." So I got Apocalypse World, and I had some sort of weird disenchantment. And it was not because I didn't like Starforged. To this day, I still think that Starforged and Ironsworn are like some of the, and they're just like remarkable achievements. And I had just so much fun. I mean, I think that the system in Starforged Ironsworn was so cool and just like blew my mind that this was a possibility, right? Obviously. And so when I read Apocalypse World, which is like sort of the source book for Powered by the Apocalypse, I was like, saw what was in the sausage, and I was like, ah. And I was like, you know what? I'm kind of tired. Like I'm a little bit exhausted of this, right? I don't want to keep creating a big, like I don't want to spend 5 hours like creating the entire galaxy or the kingdom that I play in. I don't want to have it so open ended. I want things to be more directive. And so, actually, from there is when I started getting into Free League stuff and picked up Dragonbane and Deepfall Breach. And so, when I got this was not long after I'd started the channel, and I went in like posts and stuff saying, "Hey, what do you think? What should I get?" And people said, "Blades in the Dark. You got to get Blades in the Dark." And so I got it, and let me just show you like what happened when I opened it. All right, so I picked up the book, I read the back, and I was like, "Okay, let's see here. It is a robust core mechanic, lightning fast. Oh no, What does narrative first mean? Narrative first, fiction first. What does fiction first mean, right? And then I opened the book and making the game your own. I don't want to make the game my own. This book is best practices and useful elements. The conversation, oh, this stuff looks very familiar. Critical success, partial success, oh, darn. The game structure, free play, no. Downtime? Actions? Now, wait a minute, that sounds a lot like moves. Resistance roll. And by the time I got here to clocks, I said, no, thank you. I said, here it is. Yep, this is it. This is, all of this looked to me exactly like Starforged. And I said, I don't want this again. I want a game that is to hit at armor class 0. I want a game that, it's all on the line with dice. And so I sort of over-reported, let's call it that. I over-reported how much of it that I had looked through, and I said, hey, everybody, I read Blades in the Dark. Not for me. I'll take my money back, even though now I've been around the block in terms of games so much to know that this is an extremely affordable game. I think it's like $30. Um, so yeah, I just didn't give it a chance. And to my credit, I couldn't. Like there was something I just was not able to see it in the way that it is, because even some of that stuff I just talked about makes no sense. My criticism of like, oh no, fiction first. Well, what else is there? In my head, I was going, oh, fiction first. No, no, no. I don't want a game with fiction first. Well, what is Into the Odd? Is that non-fiction first? Like what is Across a Thousand Dead Worlds? Is that fiction second? Everything's fiction first. And so what does it actually mean? It is not a throwaway line. That is one of the first insights about this game that I discovered. This game is fiction first. And that means that you resolve the fiction first, and then you figure out the mechanics that support that fiction, right? So it is an inversion. And this is probably in a lot of things, not only the things I just pointed out, but a lot of things that as I bring them up, some of you are going to have the impulse to say, no, 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 I'm not interested in that. But I just extend like a little, look, come on, how long have we known each other? Extend me a little bit more patience. Listen just 5 minutes longer than you normally would. Um, and if you're gonna go, at least go to Noble Knight Games. All right, so start at the top. I also want to say that regarding Duskfall, another thing that I said was, I don't want to play another game that doesn't have a setting. Like, even though Starforged, you were in the Forge, it basically just said, like, oh, it's this offshoot of the Milky Way galaxy. Now you have to determine, like, what are the politics? Is there, alien life? Is there cybernetics? All this stuff. And I was like, see, I don't want to do this again. I don't want to create it. And I just completely ignored the fact that there is a setting here, and it's actually an awesome setting. Um, there, it's like fairly built out, and I guess it looks generic, or it looked generic to me, but because I didn't even really read it. This is uh, this this place is surrounded by like this ink black water. I think this is one of the coolest things. It's surrounded by ink black water, and like if you look at it though at night, you can see starlight. Like you could see the stars that we would see up in the sky. You can't see them in the sky, but there's like an inversion, right? And there's all these are the shattered isles, okay? And so you're just going to be playing like in a part of this. This is Duskfall right here, and this is a whole world that is like available, and it is not only a heist game, it's like supernatural. There are specters, there are malevolent, non physical forces at work, there are cults. Um, there are lots of different places within the city that are where you can indulge all sorts of vices. There are locations everywhere. And then in deep cuts, the setting is expanded out even more because people are so hungry for lore. There are videos on Blades in the Dark that are just like lore videos. So I was completely wrong about that. That one just no excuse for that one. But so it is this defined setting. All right, it is a heist game. You work on a crew, and you are part of a faction. And being on a crew, part of a faction, you got to get reputation, you got to get coin, and you got to keep the authorities off your tail. And as you succeed in heists, you build your rep, you build your power, your influence, reputation, you build your money, you build your empire, you get to like build things onto your hideout and stuff like that. There is a whole actually it'd probably be easier for me to just show this like quick start guide that comes. So um, there are multiple different comprehensive playbooks in Blades in the Dark, and these are player sheets that are fully built out. Like they have just like everything you need to know about your character and their advancement. And let me actually bring this up on the screen. Yeah, I'm just like realizing that this content that comes from the Blades in the Dark website is like cannot be taken for granted. It is so comprehensive. These player sheets, look at this. So here's one of the archetypes is a lurk. Every single thing that you need is on here. Like everything you need. It has like all the basic stuff, but then even you can see you have like friends, items, everything is just peeling off that mental load for you. Um, and it's not only instructions, it also is like pointing out the specific special abilities for this character type, etc. There's lots of different types of them and some additional ones that I don't fully understand yet, to like a ghost and a vampire. But in addition to the individuals, you also create a crew, and then this is a crew sheet. And you can basically like here are all the upgrades you can get and the different things that you have to do to get them. You have like a crew roll where you can roll certain things as a crew. You have a buildup of heat and vaults and stuff, and so this is uh, this is the start of what I'm talking about with like this game has so much solo potential and even in places that you don't think of the solo potential in. For instance, you could look at the crew thing and say, "Oh, that's too bad I won't be able to do that in solo play." It's like, no, actually, this is awesome for solo play. This is perfect because that means we're gonna be able to do something that we're not usually able to do in solo play, which is play multiple characters. Ah, you know what? That is another one of those access points on my little index card for Against Darkness. That's a big access point as well. But it's like 4AD does that pretty well, but a lot of other games, if you try to have even one, two additional people, it could be kind of difficult. Call to the Green just does have a companion mechanics. But this is going to, when I talk about this, I think you'll see that this provides a unique opportunity here. And with the tools like this, it's going to be a lot easier than we think. Okay, so we can talk about all that till the what I say proverbial cows. Are they proverbial? But I said, what is this mindset shift? Right? What is it? And I think two things. There's a significant mindset shift if you're coming from somewhere like D&D, and there's also a subtle but extremely important mindset shift if you're coming from something like Ironsworn Starforged, because I understand that there are certain things that look the same, and there are things that are the same, or are exactly the same in mechanics wise, not exactly like copyright infringement, but the differences, the small differences, are extremely meaningful, and we're going to talk about those, because it is in those small differences that you begin to understand what the game is. Like, what is the actual thing about this game that makes it what it is? And so to do that, I'm going to try out two analogies. You can see if you get them. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. But my hope is that you have those analogies in your brain, and then see if that starts to make more and more sense as time moves forward. Okay, so let's start here. All right, just to differentiate here, we have painted figurines versus still unpainted. So we have Legolas, and Gandalf, and they have to. The three hobbits like went rogue, right? And so they have to put, they got to put them down. And so it's hobbits, wizard, elf, and suppose you control the hobbits, right? And you have your reasons. You're tired of Gandalf telling you what to do, telling you to, if he tells you one more time not to confuse him for a conjurer of cheap tricks, you said you're gonna blow your top. And what does he do the very next day? I'm not a conjurer. So they've had it, and this is the part that Tolkien. This is the deleted scene. Um, but obviously these two are more powerful, and so in a classic, popular game, tabletop game, you would determine your course of action, your group, and then when people are in basic agreement, or each person says what they want to do, you're going to indicate your choice. I'm going to just do this gently. You're going to roll the dice, whatever that result is, and you're going to see how successful it was. So, like, Samwise here is going to try to do the frying pan to the head, and this is a roll over game. He had to roll over 13. He got a 6, and so he misses, and he is now like exposed, and Gandalf vaporizes him. All right, so now, if we were to do this in, like, say, Ironsworn, we'd have the same kind of thing, right? We would have, well, it would be not the same kind of thing, but it would be the same order of operations. It would be you envisioning what's before you, right? That would be like the move would be to envision the scene, and then you would make some sort of action, whether that would involve an attack, a flee, doing something sort of like creative, and then you would roll your what is it, 2d10 versus your, geez, not remember it now, but you would roll against whatever the target roll is, and you would see whether it was a strong hit, a weak hit, or a miss, right? And then based on that, you would be able to get whatever benefit, or you would suffer whatever consequence that you had determined what was at stake in that encounter. All right. So the difference, the first difference that we have to realize about Blades in the Dark is that that order of operations doesn't work. It doesn't work that way. And if you cannot get this piece of things, it's you have to get this piece to move on from it. Like, it's like Eric Erickson's stages of development. If you don't get past industry versus inferiority, like, you're just stuck there for the rest of your life, right? And so you have to get past this. And the thing you have to get past is that you are not necessarily determining this course of action as it is happening. Let me be more specific. We'll use D&D for an example. In D&D, players are in the present. They are making decisions as the events unfold, like they are in a play. They're performers in a play, okay? In Blades in the Dark, players describe what either has already happened or is happening in a cinematic moment, like they're recording a scene, all right? But so this is the difference between rendering and recording, all right? And it's like they're recording the scene just right, and no matter what happens in the scene, things are not going to go exactly as planned. And so the challenge lies not in the dice roll and what it allows or does not allow or the consequence, but in which consequence or outcome is the one that you are going to choose to move forward. Because though most games say this, this is one of the few games that I really do think means it when it says, um, this is not like consequences are not penalties. You are progressing the story. And it doesn't just say that. I know it doesn't just say that because there are some things that incentivize that. Okay. There's incentivization for players making it harder on themselves. Okay. So D&D, you're in the present, you're making decisions as the events unfold. You are in a play. In Blades in the Dark, you describe what has happened in this scene, what's happening in a cinematic scenario, and you're recording a scene, or you already recorded it and now you're editing it. And you recorded it, you've edited it, you have it just right, and then you press play. And that is how a scene unfolds in Blades in the Dark. In D&D, you navigate the fiction step by step. As it's being written, you are actively writing it. But in Blades, you establish the fiction, then you test its validity with the mechanics. Okay? So put it another way, D&D is like an improvised on-stage performance in real time. Blades in the Dark is like specifically this one is like a heist movie. You're editing it in post-production, getting it just right. This is a point in which some bail and they say, no, I don't, that doesn't feel immersive to me. It doesn't feel like it has stakes. So here's a couple of things. Number one, really? Like that doesn't feel immersive to you? Yeah, no. It doesn't feel immersive to me because I'm separated from the action. And hey, man alone, didn't you say that you didn't like the fate system because it separated you from the action? Very astute. And also, how dare you? But what I actually said was I did not like the fact that fate kept code switching in and out of immersion. So I'd want you to sort of like go into the scene and be in the scene and then quickly step out of the scene and tinker with some things and then step back in the scene. In this one, I am like I'm editing it with like my controller right here. That's what I'm doing with the scene and I am trying out different possibilities and then I'm getting it just right. And then I'm watching it. And if you say that's not immersive, it's like, okay, well, why? Is because it's behind a screen or that it's not happening simultaneously? It's like, do you think that the D&D stuff is happening simultaneously? Do you when you're watching a movie, are you like, oh yeah, this movie's pretty good, but like this stuff has already happened. It's not happening now. I'm being sort of obtuse, but there are benefits to this that can enhance immersion. Number one, your players can start right in the action. If this was like an art gallery, right? They're doing a heist in an art gallery, and that'll be the example that we use of the playthrough. You can start your gameplay session here, like right here, right in media res, right in the middle of the action. You don't have to talk about driving there. You don't have to talk about a conversation. You are here. You are in it. And so it is episodic. It's like a TV show that has, it focuses on the high points. It's not telling you the interstitial pieces in between those high points. It's episodic. So instead of planning it, you start mid score, you fill in the gaps. And furthermore, you have tools. And we'll talk about what those tools are when we talk about the mechanics. But you can even be confronted with a scenario and you say, oh no, how am I going to get out of this one? Oops, hit my knee and my funny bone is pulsating. It is horrible. Oh, that's such a terrible pain. Okay, so you can be in a situation that you feel like you're screwed, but no, you remembered to bring a tool that is just so clever and handy, and you do a flashback about how you brought that tool, and that flashback is the first time you think of that. Okay, so it's like, guess who? More people dropping like flies. Oh, so you could just go back in time and fix things, and it doesn't even matter. You don't even have to prepare. Well, wait till I tell you that you for your equipment, all you do is like decide whether you are going to have like light, medium, or heavy equipment, and then when you need something, you roll against that number like a stat. But it fits. It all fits because you are working retroactively to build the scene forward. And I'm telling you, with the clocks, with the things that we have that measure progress and show consequence, it there are stakes. In fact, I feel urgency playing this game. I feel excited, forward propelling anxiety that feels it's thrilling. And if you can't see that right now, I get it, but you have to make this shift first. Failure is storytelling. It doesn't block the action. If you fail a roll, it just creates a complication, a change that then becomes part of the story. All right. Now you might say, well, then what? So I never get hurt. I never die. No, you can. Um, you can get harm. This can limit your participation in the current like heist. If you have too much harm, too much stress, which is another consequence you can get. It could eventually become trauma. Too much trauma that isn't dealt with can eventually lead you to have permanent trauma, and then you can't do the job anymore, and you retire. And so uh, this is something that there is still maybe something missing, and I think this is my last attempt to talk about this asynchronicity. I'll stop. We'll talk about the mechanics. We're not going to come back to this like uh, full on, but keep these in your mind as we move forward with the mechanics. Okay, analogy number two. All right, for analogy number two, we need to go back not to D&D 5e, but negative 5e. Chess. Okay, so suppose that you knew how to play chess. You don't know how to play chess? Don't worry. Even if you don't know how to play chess, this uh, very simple idea can be taught to you in 1 second because you don't need to know anything about how these pieces move or anything like that. What we're going to say is that um, we have this here, we'll do this here, we'll do this here, and maybe we'll do that right there. Sure, whatever. Okay, so you don't need to know anything about chess. All you need to know is in chess, you can move your piece one piece at a time anywhere that you want on this board, right? So there's a queen. The queen has the largest span of movement. They can move to the maxima in any direction. And it is like the combined powers of the bishop that can go diagonally in any direction, and the rook or the castle, which can go up this way or this other move that nobody understands. No, I'm kidding. Castling. Um, all right. So if I want to see like, okay, what would happen right here if I took this, right? Okay, so I'd leave that there, and then you can't touch other people's like pieces like that. But you could say, okay, I'll put this here, and then. But what if I went like that? All right. What the minute I just did that, I took my finger off. I'm done. You cannot take your finger off the piece. All right. Um, and this is fundamentally what happens in D&D, other games that are similar to it, right? You have to figure out what you want to do before you do it. So imagine that you're breaking into a noble's mansion. All right, D&D. Step one: you sneak to the door, and on the way there's a guard. So the GM says, "I need a stealth check." You pass the stealth check. You are able to sneak to the door. On the door, you see a lock, and you say, "Hey, what's up with this lock?" And the GM describes it, and you say, "Is it possible for me to break it?" Well, I don't know. The guards are nearby, etc. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead. I have a lock pick. I'm gonna pick it. Okay, go ahead and you can roll, and then use that tool. That'll add this amount to your roll. Okay, so you roll that, and no, you failed the roll. The alarm triggered. The guards come out, and now you got to deal with that. All right. In each of those choices, right, it was like, all right, first I'm going to sneak to the door, right? And it was like, okay, I'm going to roll. Okay, got it. All right, now I'm at the door. What's this door about? Roll a perception check. Okay, I rolled. Okay, I got it. All right, here's what the deal with the door is. Okay. So I'm gonna go. I'm gonna actually try to pick the lock here. I'm gonna use a tool, so I get an additional +2. Oh no, I tried to pick the lock, but I failed, and now the alarm system, and it's like now you've taken your hand off the piece, and now the rest of the world gets to act based on what you've done. In Blades, um, instead of trying to sneak into this noble's mansion, you go ahead and you can start in the vault. You're already in there, right? Let's say this is the vault. You're already in the vault, and say GM says, "All right, you're in the vault. What do you see?" Ask the players that. What do you see? The players say, "You know, we're probably surrounded now, but I'm not worried." Why aren't you worried? Oh, I bribed a guard earlier. Okay, so then you would do a flashback. All right, and you have to pay for that flashback, right? That flashback will add some stress, or there's some other things that can happen, right? But you then go and talk about how that happened. Well, I met the guard. It was at a grocery store, whatever it is, and then you go back to the present. Great. And then you say, okay, so you're going to be able to the guard's going to let you go because you did the flashback roll. That worked out pretty well, but it was a partial success, and so you were able to get out towards the back door, but the back door is locked from the outside. And now I'm going to roll finesse for picking the lock, right? And you can you can try that. If you fail, the GM is going to introduce a complication. Not an alarm, but maybe you picked up the wrong score or you went in the wrong vault, right? The point is that you can go through lots of different steps in Blades in the Dark before you decide what you've done, right? Just because I went into this vault here doesn't mean that I can't go back and change what I came into the vault with. It is a um, it is establishing scenes that already exist in the fiction and resolving them in dramatic beats. It's fiction first, fiction forward, then the resolution happens after that, right? So you say what you're going to do. I'm going to go out of the vault and I'm going to run to the back door. Okay? You don't have to ask permission to run to the back door. You're going to run to the back door. And if you wanted to, you can ask the GM, how difficult would that be? And they will give you a rating of one of three ratings: controlled, risky, or desperate. That is called the position. When you want to make a choice, you can find out if that choice you've made is controlled, risky, or desperate. that is going to tell you how difficult it is to complete it, right? Because you're going to do a dice roll, and it's a very simple dice roll. Like you'll create a dice pool of d6s, and then you'll roll those for an action roll based on how many stats, modifiers, etc. you can gather into that dice pool, and you'll use your highest roll. And if it's a 1 to a 3, 1 to 3, it's going to be a fail. If it's a 4 to 5, it'll be a partial success, and if it's a 6, it'll be a full success, right? So say you say, all right, I'm just going to bolt through here, knock people over, and go to the back door. What do you think about that? And look, I took my hand off the piece. What would happen then? The GM will say, well, that is a desperate move because you are going to trip the alarm. You're passing through several people with guns. But in addition to establishing the position of how risky it is, the GM also establishes the effect, okay? And the effect also comes in 3 flavors. This is one of the main functions of what the GM or director does. They establish the position and the effect for different choices that the player makes. This allows the player to not only determine what level of risk they want to take, what level of consequence they want to take, what possibilities that they want to gamble on or odds. It also lets them know what kind of situation they're in, how bad is it, and then what effect do you get for each of those different situations. All right. So if you say, all right, running straight to the door is a desperate move, but it is going to have a great effect. Okay, that's very high impact, very strong results. Bottom line is, if that succeeds, you're gone. You're leaving, right? You don't have to worry about anything else. And then you say, okay, well, what about sneaking out of a window? Well, that window is pretty high up, and there might be an alarm, so that's a risky position. And the effect is standard. So risky is like standard danger, common, most actions. It'll have a normal impact, right? It will, if you succeed, it should work out well for you. If you get a partial success, you're going to have some complications. And if you fail it, you're going to have a complication, right? And then you could say, oh, well, what if I create or I short circuit the camera system and then I use this special ability, etc. Well, that's a controlled position, but it has a limited effect. It's not always paired this way. I'm just kind of covering all of them. And so that way you're provided with those opportunities. You're able to say, what if I did this? Okay, that's desperate and great. Okay, take my hand off. What if I went out this window? Okay, that's risky and standard. Okay. All right, what if I went this way? Oh, that's controlled and limited. Then you make those decisions, right? And you can do certain things to improve your role or push for better position or a better effect. Like you sort of like campaign for it. Okay. So, but if you just, accepted it as is, right? They said, okay, this is a risky position and it has a standard effect. You are going to assemble your dice pool, right? And you're going to assemble your dice pool for each action rating dot. So if you look at your sheet, I'm sorry, your play kit, for each dot that you have here, right, they're divided into the 3 main attributes. Anything that you do, you're going to use an action. Anything that like happens to you, you're going to use the attribute to see how you react to it. So if you have nothing in that category, 0, then you'd roll 2 dice and take the lower result. That's the worst one possible. But you get 1 dice for each action rating dot. And then you can get another dice for assistance if somebody wants to help you. And if that still gives you a crummy dice pool, you can push yourself. You can get another die for pushing yourself. Or the GM, another thing that they can do is they can see that you're kind of squirming. Like, I don't know, it's kind of bad odds. And they say, well, I would like to offer you a devil's bargain. And a devil's bargain is another move that the GM can do, and it basically is, I'll give you another dice, but something bad is going to happen regardless. There's collateral damage. Something is going to, and you don't know which one. And you can push yourself. You could say, I'm going to really try hard and give myself an extra die. Well, you can do that, but this is going to be the first example of like the name of this game, which is paying the piper. It's like, okay, you could push yourself, but you automatically take 2 stress. All right. Now, this is the last thing I'll say before I stop this line of things and make this all a lot simpler, because I know that if you're lost right now, you're lost, and it's okay. I understand. I think what we do next will make a lot of this come together. Essentially, if I have, right, I pushed myself, I got an extra die, and let's just say my action rating was 1. And so now I roll, and I'm going to take the higher result, right? So this is a 4. And so on any, no matter what position you're in, controlled, risky, or desperate, a 6 means you succeed, always, okay? A 4 means it depends how, like, what the level here, what the position or risk level is here, because if you get a 4 to 5 in a controlled situation, and this is the most common result, you hesitate. You maybe have a minor consequence, a minor complication. It's a reduced effect. You get a little bit of harm. You end up in a risky position. You advance a clock. But if it's risky, you do it, but there's more of a consequence, right? Your position for the next thing you do goes from risky to now desperate, right? Because you did something and you didn't fully pull it off, and so your next situation is more difficult. Then if you're in a desperate situation, you roll a 4, you do it, but there's a consequence, and it's a serious complication. And so it shifts for each of these. You're going to have a lower structure of negative results for controlled, slightly higher or harder to roll a pure success, or a success without complication for risky, and then for desperate, unless you hit a 6, you're going to have some problems. Okay, and because of that, you're trying to determine all of these different options. And maybe right now you're saying, why would I ever do something that's desperate? Well, maybe it has a great effect. Maybe if you make a desperate move right now, you can get out of here with maximum money, and you can pull an art fixture off the wall as you do it. But it's tough. You got to make the right roll. And I think one thing that I did not mention, my Noble Knight dice, 6 is a success. Double 6s is always a crit success. Like, you do it and you do it. It's like a very well, an impressive result. Okay. Are you lost yet? Fret not. We're about to break this down, Man Alone style. You're going to love it. All right, let's do it. Let's say it like this. This is a way that a structured scene unfolds in this game. Ready? You start. The GM presents a situation. The player chooses an action. The GM sets a position and an effect for it. The player might investigate several different options. The GM will give different positions and different effects for those. The player then chooses an action, right? And the GM sets a position effect. You can adjust the dice pool, right? You can use a flashback at the cost of some stress. You can push and gain some stress, but also gain a die. You can use a devil's bargain. Somebody else can assist you. We'll talk about this. You adjust the dice pool to whatever, and then you roll the dice. No matter how many dice you roll, you're just going to choose the one with the highest result. The exception to that, of course, is if your dice pool has 0, right? Like you have no rating in it, you have no one to help you, etc. Then you would roll 2 dice and take the lower result. You roll the dice, and you're going to check 1 to 3 is a failure, 4 to 5 is partial success, 6 is success, double 6 is crit. The GM then interprets that result. Okay, so the things I just said about like, oh, if you roll this, you get a success, but with a consequence, the GM is going to determine that in group play. We'll have to figure out a system for this in solo. Um, and then, and this is where I'm telling you, if there were any of you still hanging on that are not used to the system, this is where you're going to let go completely. The GM will say, all right, well, you failed. Here's the consequence. You're going to get some stress. You're going to get some harm. You're going to lose some money. A clock is going to advance, right? Maybe the alarm system clock advances. And then the player uh, accepts it, or they don't. If they accept it, the scene is resolved. You move on to the next step, or it's done. But the player can also say, no thanks. Screw you, GM. I'm not doing it. And they roll a resistance roll. Goodbye to everybody who is leaving at this point. Thank you for hanging around. For those of you who want to push on, let's do it. Oh, and a little side thing here. When you choose an action, I've been presenting it as pretty freeform, which I think is an okay way to do it. Like I want to open the window, etc. But you would choose actions generally based around the archetype of whatever action you're doing, right? So if you're like you want to fight somebody, you would do skirmish action, right? And then you would check your skirmish rating. If you wanted to convince someone, you'd use sway. If you could use whatever attribute. Um, you would build it around that, but it's just like any other skill in any other game. Like there's usually a skill that can accommodate most actions you can think of, unless you're going to do like play sousaphone. Okay, so say that you really went for it, right? And you ran, remember, you ran through the hallway, knocked everyone out of the way, tried to grab the Mona Lisa on the way out and jumped through the window, and you rolled a 4. And that was a very risky situation. In fact, it was desperate. The effect was great, but you didn't get a 6, even though you rolled quite a few dice. And so GM says, look, what happens here is you were able to make it, but you did get hit. Somebody had a grazing shot against you on your right leg, so you get a small harm. We'll talk about what the harm is. Also, you lost some of the stuff you were carrying, and your somebody was able to like see your profile, and so your criminal reputation has advanced, or your heat, and you were not able to grab the Mona Lisa. Okay, so everyone happy here? Great, let's move on. And you could say no, 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 and everyone look. No, it's actually part of the game. Is you could say, no, that's okay. I'll roll a resistance roll. You decide with the GM whether that can mitigate or completely eliminate the negative outcome. And what you do is you would then negotiate that, and they'll say, okay, well, you didn't get as much of a score, and your criminal reputation did raise, but no harm. All right, no harm will come to you, and no harm will come to you or your family. And then you say, okay, so now you're going to roll a resistance roll. And basically, a resistance roll is going to be the same thing. You are going to reduce or avoid the consequences, and then you are going to you're going to roll 1 dice for each attribute dot. All right. And so whatever attribute applies to that situation, you're going to take the dice for that, and you're going to make a dice pool, and you're going to roll it. And for each, how shall we say? The 6 minus your highest result, right? So actually more makes this a worse roll. Better roll. Minus your highest result is the amount of stress you have added from resisting that, right? And so, hey, if you roll a 6 or you roll a double 6, you actually get to like reduce. You can clear a stress, right? But then again, if you only had 1 attribute point and you resist, and then you roll and you got a 1, you now have added 5 stress. All right, and that's quite a bit, and that's getting close to like the player's max when they're going to start developing trauma. So you can resist it, but you have to pay the piper. Paying the piper is the name of this game. So the question that you're going to be asking in Blades You're not rolling and hoping. Instead, you are going to ask one of the most important questions known to humankind. And I hope if I ever have merch for this channel that this will be one of the stickers that I make. You are going to have to determine, is the worth the is the juice worth the squeeze? Is the consequence worth it? Is the prize that you get worth it? That is the source of the tension in this game. And failure is rarely final. You can resist, you can use a flashback, you try another approach. It's a game of control. Your choices matter more than the dice. And this is why this game, I think, is a soloist's delight. It's a soloist's delight because in so many solo games, we are actually trying to convert those kind of things into choices, because choices are what we can always do as a solo player. We can make choices. It's the details and the effects of those choices and the inputs to those choices. Those are the things that come in short supply in solo play. But choices, brother, we got choices for days, right? And speaking of choices, this is, and I imagine this is not going to help all of you, but I do imagine if it helps me, it's got to help at least one of you. And I try to do this for every game I can. I spent some time and I did an exhaustive review of the book, and I decided not to include every single one of them. I did include some rare ones, but some ones that I either didn't fully understand or I felt they were too rare. But this is all pretty much everything you need to get started here. These are all the toggles of the game. All right. These are all of the things the GM can do to change the game, all the things the player themselves can do, and then all of the buckets or the tracking or the meters that the results of those go into or emerge from, right? So the GM is actually the simplest one. The GM can control NPC reactions, right? Just like any GM, or they could the settings, stuff like that. They can also decide when a clock advances. Okay, so we're thinking of like the Trivial Pursuit piece, and they establish a clock. A common one would be an alarm system, right? And so this is sort of like your threat meter. But it can also be one like, hey, your character needs to heal. They need to convalesce until the clock reaches the highest level. Or, hey, when this clock reaches 4, you're going to have a new quest. Or, hey, when this clock reaches 8, you're the uh, the new superintendent of police is going to come in, who has been saying that they're going to take your faction down, or whatever it is. These clocks measure and play into the squeeze. They'll be part of the squeeze. And so the GM will say, this is when the clock advances and how much. Then call for a fortune roll. This is the one that's most germane to a solo player. It's basically an oracle. The GM will roll a d6 to determine anything about the world. It's sort of like a modifierless roll that's just like, is it raining right now, etc. So that's not too in depth. They can introduce consequences, so that they're the ones that say, well, here's the position that move would be in, and here's the effect of it, and here are the consequences that come with that effect, right? Sometimes they're fairly obvious, but sometimes they need to be evoked. The GM can determine when something, like what equals a success, right? Or what the success looks like, and also the consequence. Wrote that on both sides. Obviously, a chief role that they have is determining position and effect of different choices. They also determine the scenarios that you're in, right? So, like when you say we're going to try to break into this noble's house and steal this painting, they will at least partially be responsible for building that. There's something called entanglements, which is a little more complicated. I'm not going to get into that in the video. And they can offer a devil's bargain. They can say, well, I'll give you another die, but here's what happens, right? And then they'll come up with that consequence. which they don't have to tell the player in advance. They could say, if it's like a really bad thing, they could be like, oh, we'll see. That's kind of mean. All right. Now, I did say that the GM is only partially responsible. One of the amazing things about this game and why it is primed and ready to be locked and loaded into a solo play module is because it's already halfway there. The throughout this book, John Harper, who after reading this, I was like, I think he's a genius. I really do. I just was like, this is somebody who deeply, intimately understands mechanics and why they're there and what they do. And this is a book that I think finally achieves the right level of collaboration between player and GM in that there are many opportunities that incentivize a player to A, participate in world building, and B, to actually make things harder on themselves. They have more of a chance to get a positive effect the riskier something is. The XP and advancement system is based on failed rolls a lot of time. Okay, and so they participate in that, and there's general like bon ami that is recommended here, where you say, okay, so you're in this vault. What's the deal in this vault? Well, I think it'd be really cool if the vault had one of those like big, like spinny things, like old school vaults. Okay, yeah, cool. We'll do that. And then, let's see, how many like drawers are on the wall? Like safe deposit boxes. Oh, well, I wasn't thinking safe deposit box. I think there was just one case that is not only acceptable in Blades, it is encouraged. This collaborative world building, and you could see that the player has a lot more options than the GM. And so the player can they can use a special ability. You start the game with one special ability, you can get it through advancement. It's like a talent, right? They also have an option to engage a combat when you're a contact. When you're creating a character, you will like set up contacts that are preloaded on your sheet that might be able to help you in certain situations. But you're also going to list people that are like not a big fan of you. And maybe right as you're about to make it out the window, so and so got the drop on you and already stole that painting before you did. But engaging a contact, that's something you could do. Pushing yourself, getting extra die, but getting stressed. Obviously, choosing an action, whether or not you take the devil's bargain. You can accept or you can resist the consequence and then roll the resistance roll. You can assist a teammate. You can choose to have a flashback to make your position better in the present. Um, you can roll your resistance roll. You could declare a loadout item. And we're not going to get too into that, but basically your loadout is either, like I said, I forgot, is light, medium, extensive or something. And it's either 3, 5, or 7. And this will basically, it remains abstract until you need something. And then based on what you chose before the mission or the heist, that will, like what level you chose determines your odds of having what you need. This is a big thing that people don't like. I can tell you from what I've read online, some people really don't like that. I think it's awesome. I love that. But it has to stay within your load limit, which is sort of an encumbrance thing, okay? Um, and when you engage a contact, for example, everything has something that we're going to track. Well, I'll wait on that. So you could declare an item. So these are things that like less often that I saw happen. You could start a long-term project that would be in like the downtime phase. You have heat, this abstraction of like how much people are noticing you. I think the best comparison is like Grand Theft Auto or Red Dead Redemption, where it's like how many, what is it, stars that you have is how much they're like chasing you. You could protect a teammate, face danger for them. You can also set up like sort of an alley-oop for a teammate to put them in a better position. All things that are going to enhance our solo play. And how? Well, part of my answer to that is I don't know yet. I'm working on it. I have a lot of cool things that I am developing as I learn more and more about this. But I can tell you this. Because this game is set up the way that it is, it allows us to run the same scenario in and out of time. All right. And so I'm going to talk about these, but I just want to say that just to kind of plant that seed in your head. I can have 3 members of a team that I'm solo playing, and I only need to switch to them when I need to. And then I kind of like zoom out of one person and go into the eyes of another person. And that could be because this person got injured, because they got too stressed, they abandoned the operation. It could also be that I go through the whole heist, but we split up. And now I go through the whole heist again and see what happened to my other guy. I don't have to have this incredible mental load of role playing for 5 people simultaneously. I can still have the benefit of having a whole crew. Sometimes I can even use a crew role to resolve things. But also, if I want to, I can play one of them, or I can just kind of switch in and out of them as need be, have a primary one and switch out. It could be, we could come up with something for solo play that involves a sort of like flash sideways where it's like, oh no, you're screwed. What happens? Well, I thought I was screwed, but then I forgot that Jeremy was in the ceiling. And then you flash over to Jeremy, and maybe we take some stress for that or whatever. So, taking stress, tracking. This is the. Oh, that's wrong. This is another thing that you could do as a player. Is you could lead a group action. This is where you would kind of like as a crew. You might do a crew role. Yet another player option. All right, so tracking is the buckets. It is the meters, the things that we track negative outcomes. We also determine positive things. So you have a wanted level, and I think, and I must say, here's my guess on this, and then I'll look it up and see if I'm right. But I think that heat is like stress, and if you get a certain amount of heat, your wanted level goes up, which is like trauma. So stress, you get it until it gets high enough, and then it like is a more permanent thing. I hope that's what it is, because then I don't have to say anything different. That's what it is. Yep. So like heat measures how much law enforcement and factions are after you in this scenario or mission or heist, and then wanted level is like if heat increases too much, it makes future jobs riskier. It's more of a permanent stain. Okay. So your wanted level could be affected. Your faction status. This is your crew's relationships with different groups. I believe it also is your relationship within your own group. Coin is the money economy. You could use it for bribes, equipment, training, paying off heat. You got too much heat, you could pay out coin. Heat's law enforcement. Stress. Stress measures mental strain. Too much of it equals trauma. Okay. You have clocks of all kinds. You could set up anything that's not capture here. You could set up a clock, right? If part of the fiction that you want to create is that like you have a daytime job and nobody knows that in the evening you're doing these heists, you could have a clock for like your spouse's suspicion of you. That's how flexible and awesome this is. Um, yeah, so this would be stress and trauma. And then, oh, you also could do, if captured, you could serve time. I hope I'm not making that up because I have it in my notes. Did I make? Well, even if I didn't make it up, maybe that's. I don't think I did, but I think that's if you do too much, get too much of a wanted level. And then harm. Okay, so harm is physical injuries. It's kind of an interesting system for it. I think if you look at the play kit, I know I keep calling it a character sheet. You have this 1, 2, and 3 for harm, and you could take up to like 2 of these lesser effects, and then you go to these medium effects you can get to, and those start to -1 die. So like if you get a really bad injury, you would get it here. If you get a terrible injury here, and then there's a 4th level of harm, which is just fatal. So, but if you get a little thing, you could put it here. Like if you get fatigued, or you get, I forgot what the other one is, like um, overdrawn. I forget what it's called, but disenchanted or so. I don't know what it is, but those are just kind of, they're there. And so if you get a 3rd one though, it pushes up into a level 2. And if you fill up the level 2s, you get another one, it pushes into level 3, and then that can cause retirement. Now, that is one thing that I think I will take from deep cuts is some options for like um, convalescing and reducing that. I don't know though, because part of me feels like having this retirement system, it almost feels like Rogue Legacy, where I can sort of like see my or Pendragon, I can see my faction over time or my crew over time, and have different people and have them come with different roles. So we'll see. But these are essentially all of the things that the GM can use to increase urgency, as well as things that you can use to improve your position, or that improving your position will affect, or that whatever, vice versa, right? And so this, I would say, is uh, let's take the little thing that I drew on the index card earlier, and let's just kind of like add or redo it with these new terms that we have here. Okay, I'm going to try my best to do this here. So let me clear this. All right. I hope this helps, because as I was setting this up, I was like, this might be the magnum opus of this video. All right, let me zoom in. All right, so last time we mapped this out, and there we go. We started, the GM presented the situation, player chose an action, GM set position and effect, adjusted the dice pool, rolled the dice, looked at the outcome, interpreted the results, looked at what, said what the consequence is going to be. The player either accepted or resisted, which determines if it's resolved or not. All right, so here is a more built out way, including all of these terms that we have talked about, all of these toggles and trackers and stuff. All right, so here we go. To begin, the GM sets the scenario. Based on the scenario and based on their actions, the player decides what action they want to do and says, this is what I want to do. The GM sets a position and the effect of that, and can do that for multiple actions, right? The player, in determining like which action is best, can then put together a dice pool with like the way that they want to go. And there are many things that can be part of that dice pool, right? They can have a declare a loadout item that can help them. They could have a special ability that they're going to use. They could engage a contact, right? They could push themselves to get an extra dice at the cost of stress. They can assist a teammate. They could have a flashback to see that they, paid somebody off, left a door open, installed a radio transmitter. Or they can ask for devil's bargain. Or oftentimes the GM will offer a devil's bargain and they will choose to accept it. All right. Once that gets sorted out and you have all of the appropriate modifiers and you know what you're going to do, the player is going to roll the action dice and the GM is going to interpret the result. All right. The result could be a success, right? That could give you coin, that can increase your faction status. I mean, maybe not that situation will do all this, but you are headed in the direction of these things, and it could at times improve these on the spot, right? But if it is not a success, right? If it rolls a 6, it's a success. Action continues, then you figure out whether the scene continues, the scenario continues. If it's a partial or a failure, the GM has to apply consequences. If it's just a partial failure, the consequences might not be all that bad. All right, and there has to be, let's see, if the player, like after the GM intros the consequences, which could be, again, an increase in heat, could be, and heat going up too much could affect your wanted level, which could lead you eventually to spending time in prison. It can also advance a clock. because the GM, of course, decides when a clock advances. That could be part of the risk consequence package. It could do harm, it could increase stress, both of which over time lead to trauma and can lead to then retirement, right? Or at least, maybe not having to spend time off to convalesce and get back to it. So the player could accept that consequence. All right. They could say, all right, I accept that consequence and we'll figure out the next move, whatever. Um, or they could say, no, I don't accept the consequence. I resist the consequence. And the GM will say, okay, well, either we can mitigate or get rid of that consequence or decrease or get rid of that consequence, but there will be uh, you will take stress for that. There'll be other effects for that, right? And so we'll see how much stress you take by rolling a resistance roll. You look at the number for that action. You roll that many dice. The highest number you subtract from 6, and that is how much stress you have taken. From there, you determine, are we done here? Are you at the door, or did you just bypass one room? Are you home free and in your getaway car, or was this whole thing just about, sucker punching a security person in the face, right? And so you will then have to figure out, is the scene resolved or unresolved? And if it's unresolved, well then, GM sets the scenario, player decides an action. And you're basically going through these, think of it as like these different stages, and you leave this like a literal like stage where play is. And the player is going through all these different obstacles, and trying to get through them and seeing which one's best. Should I hop over this? Should I sneak under this? Right? Finally, they get here, and now what's the next scenario? Right? And all of this is involved in a heist. How many scenarios there are? Well, that's a little bit up to touch, right? It's going to see what it feels like to have. In solo play, we'll need to see. For some reason, 3 or 4 sounds right, but maybe I'm way off. Maybe it should be 6 or 7. And so if the scene's resolved, you advance clocks. And does the heist continue? Or is that completely done? Are we out of the noble's mansion or whatever? So then you enter a downtime phase. That's going to involve heat, coin, recovery, projects. If too much stress, it's trauma. Your character could retire. They might have to adjust. Too much heat could get arrested or jail time, or there's something called entanglements, which I don't understand well enough to teach. It's kind of a theme, though, that I've noticed with Blades in the Dark is like it's easy to learn, but there's like so much in terms of mastering it, which I really, really like. I think that reflects really well on a game. Okay. And so now you do downtime and you do an engagement roll to see how your crew is getting on, and then you can set up another heist, right? So I think that in terms of solo play, we might have already identified some issues, but why don't we just go through a scenario first and see how you do? Just think about, like, you can think to yourself, I'm not going to have necessarily like definitive stopping points, but I'm just going to show you how we like set up this thing and resolve it each time so that you can see it in real time. Okay. And I'm also going to adjust my seat because my patukas hurts. All right, good. I didn't make up that prison thing. So 9 stress unresolved is going to lead to trauma. Each trauma is going to like narratively and perhaps mechanically alter the way you play your character. And then 4 trauma under rules as written in the first edition would mean that your character is retired. But that is one way in which like narrative and mechanics meet in this game. And that is what I kind of think is so genius about this is like we're always looking for in solo play a way to sort of like alchemize narrative into mechanics or mechanics into narrative, but this game like makes that connection so well because just in my opinion, a lot of the right things are abstracted rather than saying, do I have the item? I don't know. Did I buy that one? How would I ever know to buy that one if I'm solo playing? How would I know that I need that? Or if I did know I need that, I'd have to know that in advance, and that ruins the surprise. Screw it. Do you have the item? I don't know. Your loadout number is 5. Figure out if you have it. Not for everyone. For me, it's like music to my ears. Reading this has been so inspiring. I got to stop. We have to do the sample play. Okay, we are going to infiltrate the House of Varnath. And we'll say that there is a painting that has hidden arcane knowledge. Um, and it is well guarded. There's a patrolling guards. There's a reinforced vault, and there's security measures that are both like physical and arcane. Okay, so basically, we're gonna be a lurk. We'll take a look at that sheet, and we will. This will have 3 pieces to it. We'll infiltrate. We will figure out how to handle the vault, the obstacle, and then we will escape. Hopefully, avoiding detection. Okay, so I chose the lurk for stealth. Let's look at the lurk. So normally we would choose a couple of different things here. They say when in doubt, you could see under lurk here. You can, when in doubt, you could just pick like the first one. But we would do a name, and if we had a day job, we'd do an alias. We do a heritage, which can be meaningful based on where they're from in the world, their look, their style, etc. And then we'd assign 4 points. I think I did a little bit more than that because solo playing, right? I need a little bit of an advantage just for this example. So I'm going to do 2 in Prowl, 1 in Tinker, and this is unfortunately not form fillable. I can't find a form fillable for this. That would be like the last thing that would make the home run into a Grand Slam. Skirmish 1, Finesse 1, and then Survey 1. And the reasons I picked these, so Skirmish is like if I get in a close quarter combat. Finesse is sleight of hand, picking locks. Survey is scanning, for danger. Tinker is disabling devices, maybe security. And then Prowl is sort of stealth and movement and stuff like that, okay? We don't have to worry about that other stuff. I'll just say the Infiltrator. You know what? We'll even see if that comes up. So the first thing, phase 1, infiltration. We're going to sneak past the guards. And so these are elite guards wearing plated uniform, and they're carrying shock batons, which maybe I didn't expect. And so the GM says the position is risky, right? Not desperate, not controlled, risky. And the effect of sneaking past them, which is the action we're trying on for size, is standard. You'll get inside, but the guards might grow suspicious. All right, and so right then, if we need to, like, suspicion is an abstract notion, and so right away, I mean, if we're just playing with a GM, the GM would do that, but we would either way in solo player or the GM, we'd have to like set a clock for suspicion. Right? And then we would have to, the GM, when the player did something, rather than jumping right to like, oh, you got heat, or you got stress, or you got harm, you could say, I'll give you 3 suspicion, and if the suspicion gets all the way up, things might happen, and then that is one of the worst drawings of this I've ever seen. You can advance the clock, so that's a tool that the GM has. Okay, so risky, standard, complication. If you roll a 6, you're good. Double 6, you're great. If you get a fail or a partial success, the guards, they're going to hear something, or they're going to see a shadow moving, and so it's going to advance the suspicion clock. So we say, all right, you know what? Let's do that. Maybe you talk about some other options, but this is the one you like. So you're going to try to sneak past the guards. You roll Prowl 2d6. All right. And I actually did roll that. Let me look what I wrote down. So I rolled a 4, partial success. So I managed to slip past the first wave of patrolling guards without drawing attention, moving through the hallways here in this house. It's a huge house. But because I rolled a 4, partial success, I get a little complication. The complication is a nearby guard doesn't hear you, but they hear an unusual sound. Like, did they just hear their echoes, their footsteps echo louder than they had thought? Was that human footsteps there? Um, and the GM decides that, you know what, I'm not going to advance the clock yet because they, in their mind, it might, they're just sort of like at a routine level of this, but if you accept this consequence, the guard is going to pause their patrol and start to look around suspiciously, and so that means the next stealth action that you do, it's going to go from risky to desperate. And I'm like, this, a lot of this operation is based on stealth here. And so, because I've read a book by Stuart Smalley, and I'm good enough, and I'm smart enough, and doggone it, I will resist these consequences. So I think this was probably a little bit early for me to do this, but I'll just stick to the script here. It was an observation-based consequence, and so you would again have to roll the thing that applies to it, and it was insight, right? Because insight, I think, is generic for like, I'm sorry, not, what is it called here? Not insight. It is insight. I'm sorry. The attribute on top is insight. So insight, yeah, would be anything that has to do with decisions or observation. So I rolled a 2d6. I had a pretty, well, I had the most mid roll of all. I got a 2 and a 3. So that means that my highest roll was 3. So that means that I got 3 stress. And so if this was form fillable, I'd be able to like dink, 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 right? And you can see here, there's like some narrative flavor here for as your stress increases. However, I did resist it. And it's not a bad choice because it was early in the heist. So you'd have to be like, do I want to already start racking up stress? That could be one way to look at it. Or you could be like, you know what, I'll fortune favors the bold. And in fact, there is this like part of the book. I can't find it right now because it's just written in the bottom margin. It's just like, be bold, take the chance. It's like, don't be a weasel is what it says. You know, don't just keep playing conservatively. This should be, your character should be bold. All right, so the guard pauses, starts scanning the hallway, but I react quickly. And I shift my weight, I blend into the shadows, and I time my movements. You know, I'm a professional, and I align with the sounds of the wind rattling nearby. And so the guard shakes their head and resumes their patrol. The house is just settling. And I am undetected, and so now I go to the vault security room. So do you see what we did there? Rather than saying, oh, what happened based on your role, we decide what happens, but we take consequences for that. We got the juice, but we suffered the squeeze. And the squeeze was we increased our stress because that was the squeeze that we preferred over my next move being desperate. All right, so now I'm in phase 2. I'm in the vault, and the vault door has a, wow, why did I think of this word? An electroplasmic lock. So that, I think I was trying to say, it needs precise disabling. It also has a pressure-sensitive floor, which triggers an alarm if stepped on it wrong. So here's my choices that I saw. I could pick the lock manually, which would be tinker, risky position with a standard effect. I could find a way to bypass the pressure plates on the floor. I would have to survey for weak spots and then finesse to navigate. Or I could use a flashback to previously have acquired the information on the lock's mechanism. And then depending on my story, the GM says, they say, depending on what you tell me here for the flashback, it could be 1 or 2 stress that I'll assign you. And so now this has changed. And the new one I think is called like a threat roll. And I just love this system here. So it was hard for me at this point, but I'm sure I'll understand and appreciate it over time. All right, so If it's simple, easy setup, it's one stress. That would be like bribing a low-level servant for details. Complex, riskier would be two stress, sneaking into the house beforehand and studying the security. So what actually happened is I met um, P- Pod. I think I was trying to say Podrick, a former locksmith who once worked for the House of Varnath, and he drank too much at a tavern. And I'm talking to him, and I convinced him to boast about his past work. And I learned something. The vault's electroplasmic lock is designed to be resistant to brute force, but it has a single failsafe override hidden inside the panel. And the floor only triggers if weight's applied for more than 3 seconds. So if I move swiftly and precisely, which are things that I could maybe do, I avoid setting it off. And I said, you know what? I didn't have to like capture this guard or anything. I just talked to him. So, one stress. And then thanks to this intel, I now have an improved position. So now I'm in controlled. I know the lock's weak point, and the effect is great. I have a clear method to disable it. I rolled a tinker, 1d6, to carefully manipulate the lock mechanism, and I rolled a 5, just short of a 6, another partial success. So which is good though for a 1d6 roll. I carefully unscrew the panel. I found the override switch, just as Podrick said, and then I maneuver a little wire tool to short circuit the electroplasmic field, and I cause the vault's lock to disengage. I could potentially probably have included something about loadout at that point, but I will leave you to determine that adventure on your own. So is partial. So the vault door unlocks, and I now I see this painting. But there's a complication, right? Because I rolled a 5. There's a soft hum of energy. It lingers in the room, signaling that the security system is not fully disabled, right? Now, there's a point where the GM is setting the scenario. So they're going to introduce a complication as well, right? This is the airfields change. You notice that the security field is still active. This is the partial success, right? It's not, and you can keep, this is the most common role. So this is something where, I think this is maybe an annoyance point for games that have strong hit, weak hit, is constantly coming up with like, well, yeah, you did it, but, and I do think this is addressed a little bit in deep cuts, but I'm not certain. You could also just do it through mechanics, like adding stress or whatever. So as you prepare to step inside, oh, I already read that. You need to disable it before grabbing the painting. So again, I can accept the consequence. The alarm is going to trigger, and this increases heat, and it causes immediate pursuit. But maybe I'm like impatient. I could roll resistance to this. Remember, I can say, no, that system is not on. We're co-creating this scene. And so I could just say the security field, I completely disabled it, and I would roll insight again to reduce or negate it. I could do a flashback. I could say, oh, this security guard, I stole his card, and I accidentally went to the security company, and I talked to the people, as whatever. At this point, the experience I was going through was like sort of testing plausibility. I was like, is this plausible? Is this real? Does this seem like it would make sense? And then I could try a new action roll. Tinker, limited effect. Okay. So, we have the guard suspicion clock. That's at 2 out of 6. The guard was slightly suspicious. If it was at 6 out of 6, the guards would say something's wrong. There's a vault security clock. And maybe let's just say for those the partial success when I didn't fully disable it, that's at a 2 out of 4. And if it's a 4 out of 4, it'll activate on its own. It'll do an alarm. And so this just has to be measured. Like, do I want to advance these clocks? And we have a lot here. We have this pressure-sensitive floor. Depending on what I choose, they can have the security system. So I decide I'm going to tinker. I'm like, it's risky, it's a limited effect, um, and I'm like, maybe I'll just go for it because it seems like if I'm on my own, this is what I would do. And this was a point where I was like, it'd be really nice to like flash sideways over to a teammate. And I think this could be a cool mechanic for solo. Is just like it costs um, one stress to like one of the two to flash sideways. Okay. Now my tinker rating though is 1. And so if I wanted to roll this, I'd roll a 1d6. But that's not enough. So what are my options? Remember the cards. I could push myself. I can get another d6 for 2 stress. If I had a teammate, I could spend a stress and they would spend a stress and give me 1d6. But I could use a flashback that would add 2 stress, which now we're really getting up there. And the GM says, or I got a little deal for you, a little bargain. I'll give you another d6, but at a cost. Your tool there that you're so fond of, it shorts out. It sparks, and it's going to raise the guard suspicion. I say, no, hell no, I'm not taking that. That's just as bad, right? That's just advancing that clock. And they go, all right, well, how about this? I did this, and I'm actually not sure if you're supposed to like, if you have latitude on the bargain or if it's always plus 1d6. I was like, we can make it 2d6, but your tool will be disabled. You can't use it again during this entire, thing. And so I decided to push myself. I want to roll 2d6, and I rolled a 1 and a 6. So I had a full success, and I succeeded with no negative consequences. The field shut down. The painting was safe to take. No additional ticks. Right now, I got to get out of here. And so, again, and I'm not going to go through every single one of them, but I got to get out. So just think of how you would do it right now. You got to get out of here. The GM sets the scene. You determine the action. What are some actions you might consider right here? How would you get out of there? You could sneak out. That would probably be prowl. You could create a distraction and run for it. Finesse. You can do a flashback. You can be creative. You can see if there's a devil's bargain. Right? And I decided I did accept the devil's bargain this time, and I rolled again, and I rolled another 1 and a 6, and I said, "Holy crap! I just rolled a 1 and a 6 twice." And I'm like, "What the hell are the odds of that?" And then I actually like couldn't stop thinking about what the odds are of it, and I can't figure out the odds of a 1 and a 6, but I did figure out that rolling a 6 and I guess a 6 and a 1 is a 1 and a 6. It doesn't matter, right? See, this is the thing I got in my head about. Anyways, it's 5.56%. It's like 1 in 18, so it's not that rare. So now I took this devil's bargain. I get a complication, and the room lights flicker, and a patrolling guard stops walking and says, "What the hell is that?" The guard suspicion clock is up to 3 to 6. Keep sneaking out. I prowl. I keep moving until finally the guard suspicion gets up to 6, and that is when I just skirmish, and I have this desperate action here where I say, you know what, I'm just gonna punch this guy in the face. But then I go, well, wait a minute, let me try a flashback again. What if I did a flashback? And I said, let me try to like get as creative as possible and see if I could reverse engineer it. So I said, all right, this guard is right in my face, and it's like, I gotta punch them out, but I need some advantage here. So, all right. I went and I used some oracles, right? I forgot what they were. I should have written them down, but it was just these basic like pictures. Here's what I came up with. Earlier that day, I went to the dry cleaners and I picked up a security guard's uniform instead of him. And so as he rounds the corner, instead of finding a thief, he just runs into somebody who is apparently another security guard. It's actually me. I'm actually wearing his clothes. He's in a bad mood because he's like, where the hell is my dry cleaning? Now, that's how a flashback works. I don't have to explain how I did it. I just flash back to that. And now that I threw that on as I was running through, I got stressed for it. But he runs into me. There's a lot of security guards there. I say, hey, he went that way, right? And because it was pretty low risk, I don't know. What would you think? Would you say you'd give one stress or two? I think it's like I didn't have to bluff. I mean, I just walked in and said, "Here's my ticket." Although getting the ticket and that, I was like, it's probably too stress because you can't just like. I mean, probably you could at some dry cleaners, but they're gonna be like, "Where's your ticket?" Like if you don't. I can't just be like, "Yes, I would like some clothes." Um. So, anyways, eventually I I'm just about out, but I roll another partial, or I'm sorry, I rolled a one just as I was about to leave. A guy's like, "Who the hell are you?" I roll a one, and I'm like, you know what? I could try to lie again. I could sway, um, but I'm just gonna punch this guy in the face. And here's something that I chose to do, and I think this is like a little bit of me asserting myself as a solo player. Is I said, you know what? I don't feel like it. I don't even feel like rolling it. I'm just punching this guy in the face because I got out, and it was one of those moments where I was like, I don't want to keep like because what happens if I punch him and then it's like, oh, you got a partial success, so you punched him, but and yeah, maybe I could say, oh, I hurt my knuckle, I got some harm, but every once in a while when you're solo playing, you got to remind yourself, I'm the boss. You know what would be awesome right now? I punch this guy in the face and I leave because I overcame a lot and I came up with a lot of good ideas, right? So, um, that's it. I got some stress, but I also got some coin, right? There's like instructions that they give you for like assessing your coin and your faction status and all of that. Okay. So we are approaching 2 hours. So the last thing, and I'll be really, really quick here if such a thing is possible. All right. So the way I sees it, I just went through all of these steps again and I was like, what does this look like in solo play? And I think you'll agree that it's not too bad compared to some stuff that you have to patch in solo play. So setting up the scenario, that can be an issue, right? We'll have to come up with tables and oracles to like set up the first scenario. Declaring an action, that's not a problem. That's already a player thing. Position and effect, that's a GM responsibility. We'll have to either come up with a standardized rule for how that's done or an oracle that has like a set modifier system that increases and decreases based on something like momentum or something like that. Modifiers, we have to figure out how the devil's bargain gets offered. Rolling the dice is no big deal. Interpreting the results, we could probably make a consequences table. Player response, obviously, that's fine. And then figuring out how much to advance the clocks. Now, honestly, I think that if we wanted to build a comprehensive system for this, we could come up with rules for this. I must say that for all this stuff, I had no problem doing it because it's not like other games where I have that thing of like, oh, am I punishing myself enough? Am I being too easy on myself? No, because it's already a collaboration between the player and the GM. That's already happening. And if it's too hard on me, I can resist it. And so I feel like this game just lends itself way better to like Scout's Honor, because there's not really too many benefits for like skating by on it. So yeah, I think the GM presents a scene in the challenges. So do some mission generators. Who's the target? Where's the job? I did actually get these blades in the deck, which I think is kind of a funny name for it. And I actually did get the PDF files for these. There is, oh, this is, yeah, this is really good. Actually, if you go to the alexandrian.net, I'll put the link below. This is a really good thing to pick up here, and it's free. Um, that's deep cuts. I think this is Blades in the Deck, an alternate player kit. Okay, so that's maybe more refined. Oh, right. So I'll just show a page of these. So yeah, this one is characters. I for sure got this one. Actually, these are on. Well, you should get them from Noble Knight Games, but if they're not available there, they're on sale at Drive Through RPG for 65 right now for all 4 decks rather than 110, and the PDFs. So these are going to be really good, like just summoning up characters. That's going to be really simple. Factions and locations, I could probably do without this one, but I think, hey, any cards that I can get to make it easier. Crews, same thing. This one I think will probably be the most helpful one, is like the heist and complications. And each card, looks a little weird to read, but each card has like different, you just flip them over to get different things, and this is going to fill in for the complication. It'll take like a little bit of abstraction, but it's going to work out really nice. So there was a fourth one, I can't remember it right now. It's not coming up, and I'm tired. Okay, so I want to thank you for coming along in this. I am going to go get myself a little bit of browse time at my FLGS. And when I come back, I'm going to get some coffee in me. I should be refreshed and restored. I don't know many people that are going to want more after 2 hours of video, but surprisingly, I feel pretty psyched to dive back into Torch in the Dark. This video right here is going to take a while to upload, so I don't know how long this one will go, but it just feels so good to have like a really nice printed book. I love it. This is also this really nice thing I got this from Amazon. Anyways, thank you for joining. I hope that you enjoyed yourself and learned a lot about Blades in the Dark, and I hope to see more solo stuff for it. Bye.